Hello. Hi, everyone. Oh, welcome. Oh, yeah, you can clap for me. That's okay. You can do that. I love that. Thank you. Like Tinkerbell, it keeps me alive. Thank you so much for coming out. The weather is lovely. It's less than 115 degrees. We're feeling really good. Yes. My name is Rebecca Stummy. I'm the producer of live events here at LAist, and I'm so happy you're all here with us. All right. I'm going to turn it over for the first portion of the evening to our food and culture editor, Gab Chabrán.
Hello. How's everybody doing? And
Hi.
here is Nicole Rucker. Am I okay right here, or did you want to actually?
No, you're fine right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So today, Nicole has joined us here at the LAist studio, and she's going to walk us through a new recipe.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we making today?
So I'm making a banana snickerdoodle.
Okay.
And the reason I'm making this recipe is because it contains one very sad, flaccid, overripe banana. Because this is about climate and the emergency.
So is this from your counter in your kitchen at home?
Yeah, and then it got really ugly and brown, and then I put it in the freezer so I could use it how I wanted to. And mainly my husband uses them for smoothies, but it's still always a good recipe to have in your back pocket, a way you can use just one banana, especially if it's overripe, because bananas are endangered. And it's a very scary part of the reality that we might not be eating bananas in 20 years.
Oh my God, that's so
I know,
sad.
and I love bananas so much, so
Okay.
I try to use them as much as I can.
So how long do you typically, what's a reasonable length for freezing a banana? Because I feel like I've left mine for way too long before.
Well, I don't know. I feel like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
If they make it that long. But you know what the trick is? If you freeze bananas and you put them in a Ziploc, you have to get all the air out of it. So you might want to suck some of the air, because that will reduce freezer burn and crystallizing on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I'm
that'll
just
keep for
tossing
longer.
mine in there. So
Raw
that was-
dogging in the freezer. All right.
Yeah.
Good.
That's me.
You'll figure it out.
I'm trying. That's why you're here. So to help
When the
me.
bananas start to gather fruit flies, that's when you put them in
Oh man, don't
in
even
the
talk to me
freezer.
about the fruit flies. Okay. So
Okay.
what do we got here? How do we start?
Okay, so this recipe is pretty classic. It's sort of like making a banana bread, but without as much moisture. There's no buttermilk or cream or anything in it. The moisture comes from the eggs and comes from the banana. But the first thing is that as bananas are frozen and then thawed out, they have a lot of liquid in them because the cell wall starts to break. And so the water comes out of them quite easily, which is part of the issue when you turn them into banana bread, is that then they'll have a lot of water and it might make it gummy. This is so gnarly looking.
Yeah. So you have the paper towel down to.
And I'm
going
gonna
to
cover it up and I'm gonna blot.
Okay.
And then while we do the rest of our work, we're just gonna let it sit here.
Oh, okay.
And it's gonna take up some of that water that is escaping, and that can just be by itself. And then the next part of this recipe is working the fat into the flour. I like to do things at the last minute, so I don't like waiting for butter to cream. So I designed this recipe to include reverse creaming. And I know that there are some students here from a culinary program. So have you guys heard of reversed creaming before? Anybody here? So reverse creaming is the process of incorporating fat into flour and the sugars, usually in the opposite order. Rather than creaming the butter with the sugar, you do it all at the same time. So you're gonna do that over here.
So we've got flour, we've got the
Sugar, we've got the
sugar,
butter,
the
we've got the salt, we have baking soda. And you're just going to mix it with the mixer,
Okay.
and you're just gonna make it until it's all crumbly and the butter is included.
Okay. How high am I going?
I
on
would
this
go
thing?
medium.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect. You're doing such a great job already.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So
I love.
you like words of affirmation.
Oh my God! It's my bread and butter. It's
Good
my
job.
fat and flour.
So this recipe includes 1 egg yolk and 1 egg white.
Great.
The good thing about egg whites is that if you save them, they can go in the freezer, and then you can use them to make something fun, like a pavlova or something.
Or a cocktail.
Or you can make a cocktail if you
Yeah.
drink. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
A nice frozen egg white.
Definitely.
But then it needs 1 egg yolk and 1 egg white together.
Do you have any strategies for separating the whites from the yolks?
I typically do it by rolling them back and forth between the shell. If you crack it on a flat surface, you have a better chance of not breaking the yolk. If you're making a meringue, that definitely matters. But if you're just making cookies, it's not that big of a deal, and you shouldn't stress out about it.
Gotcha.
I really tried to layer in all the ways to reduce food waste in this recipe and have talking points for us.
Yes.
If you buy vanilla beans and you have a little bit of booze at your house, you scrape the seeds out, but then you put the beans back in a jar or a bottle and you pour alcohol over them, and that will make vanilla extract that tastes just like regular vanilla extract. So vanilla beans are very expensive. They're also endangered. They come from an orchid in the rainforest. They have to be hand pollinated. Same thing with bananas. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know
They
that.
don't have sex themselves. There's a guy that walks around
Those
with a
poor
brush
bananas.
and pollinates them.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
So you want to use every part, is what I'm saying, because they went through so much work
Yeah,
in
they
order
did.
to get here.
Yeah.
Those poor bananas, sexless bananas.
Poor sexless bananas.
And vanilla.
So you mentioned, I'm sorry, for the vanilla, going back really quickly, you said you can mix it with alcohol. Any type of alcohol? I mean, I'm thinking like a bourbon, because, that's what we're used to. You have some delicious bourbon cookies out in the lobby today.
Yes.
Vanilla bourbon, that is.
If you're doing it the long way, people use Everclear or vodka. If you're doing it the easy way, you would use bourbon or whiskey.
Okay.
I typically go with the bourbon or the whiskey because I don't like waiting as much.
Right.
But when people make vanilla extract from scratch, they usually use a high alcohol clear thing, so it doesn't impart any extra flavor. Because someone's going to fact check me on this. The bourbon in bourbon vanilla is not actually bourbon alcohol. It's a type. It's a name for vanilla. I think it's bourbon.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. Someone should Google it.
Yeah, and I think right now at Trader Joe's too, they have both
They have a bourbon flavored syrup with vanilla.
Right, but then they
That's
also have
non-alcoholic.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a non-alcoholic bourbon vanilla.
Right.
So I am right.
Yeah, you are.
You're
how are we
doing a
on
great
this?
job. It's
Okay.
looking really good.
Thank
So
you.
basically reverse creaming, you're just incorporating fat into flour and the sugar. You got some little butter chunks in there. They're going to go away soon, but it's looking great. It looks like a crumble. I don't know if you guys can really see it on the screen.
Oh yeah.
You can go further.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're going to add our eggies in there, and then we're
Okay.
going to add our banana. And when we do that, we're going to use the spatula so that we don't make too much gluten. This is a little too aggressive for that.
I'm
No,
sorry.
I mean, when we get to the next
Oh, I
step.
thought you were
You're
talking
okay
about
right
me.
now. No, you're
Okay.
doing fine. Yeah.
I have that tendency to get aggressive.
You're going
sometimes,
hard on it, I know.
Especially in the kitchen. So, sort of territorial in that respect.
Okay, so turn it down for a sec. I don't want to lose my fingers.
Okay.
I have some chunks because my brown sugar at my house was a little bit older.
Okay.
So I need to break up a little bit of these chunkies.
So this almost reminds me of making a pie crust or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's part of why I kind of asked myself, if we can make cookies, if we can make pie crust this way, how else can we use this application? One of the benefits of using reverse creaming is that you don't miss the mark on creaming and incorporate too much air, which would make dry cookies. Mm-hmm. The other thing is you don't have to wait for the butter to temper. And then the third biggest upsell for me is that it drastically reduces the amount of gluten that is developed. So if you are an over mixer, that might be a benefit for you because you won't be incorporating as much gluten into the recipe. I can tell you like to overmix.
I got sort of a heavy hand when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
definitely.
this looks really good. So I'm going to add these eggs, and you can mix them in.
Woo.
Yay! And then, the thing is, at the end of it, it looks like cookie dough anyways.
Yeah.
It's not much different. So, it's not like banana bread where we're gonna have batter.
Right.
This is gonna form more of a scoopable, chunky cookie dough.
I love it.
You could add chocolate chips to this. You could add some nuts to it. In my next cookbook, this recipe is in there.
Halloween candy, perhaps?
Halloween? What do you mean?
like a chocolate bar or something.
Oh, that's
like that.
fine. I thought you were talking about that one that people like that's
like
gross.
wax lips or something. No.
Yeah, candy
Oh,
corn.
no. I'm with you on the candy corn.
Okay, good. I'm
My
glad
wife,
it's a
she's
safe
not
space.
here. She loves it.
She loves
so,
it? Okay,
yeah.
turn that off. We're done with that.
This is all done.
Here is this
Okay.
really unappetizing. Ugh. Just so gross. By the way, you can do this exact same thing with canned pumpkin.
Ooh.
Yeah, great. And I feel like that's important to note because when you're making some pumpkin pie recipes, doesn't it really make you mad when there's like just half a can of pumpkin left? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah.
And then it's like, what do? You feed it to the dog or something? Because you
Right.
only have this much pumpkin. You only need that much pumpkin to
Right.
make the recipe.
Now let me ask you another question really
Yes.
quickly. Would you be doing the same thing if you're using one of those cute little pie pumpkins? You know, if you're deciding to go outside of the
If you were going to be artisanal,
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I like to get fancy sometimes.
roast a pumpkin. I
Yeah.
wouldn't use a pie pumpkin. I would use a kabocha squash.
Oh.
I like that. Yeah,
Okay.
I like a kabocha. It has lower moisture and like a lot of beta carotene, so it's really orange.
Does it do anything to the flavor, or is it pretty much the same?
I think it tastes more like pumpkin.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Not pumpkin flavoring or pumpkin spice as we've all come to accept as the
It's
true
not
flavor
pumpkin
of
spice, it's pumpkin flavoring. This
Right.
recipe does have pumpkin spice in it though, because we need that. It's tasty.
Okay.
But yeah.
We're entering fall, you know.
I
it's
mean,
the
I don't know
time.
if anyone in here follows me on Instagram, but I've been in fall since September 1st.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got pie season coming up. We were talking about it earlier.
It's all I think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't roast my own pumpkins for pie anymore, by the way.
Okay.
And this year, I might make pumpkin cheesecake instead.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds wonderful.
It is wonderful. It's a Basque cheesecake with pumpkin.
Oh, okay. I saw that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so yummy.
Can you explain to the audience what a Basque cheesecake is for those who aren't familiar?
It's a burned cheesecake.
But it's like a caramelized top, essentially. And you make it in a springform pan, correct?
I just make it in a cake tin.
Okay. But it's there's no crust or anything, essentially, right?
There's no crust. It's just cream cheese and whatever else you're doing. And
Yeah.
then it gets burned on the top, so it's very caramelized.
Yes.
And it doesn't need a water bath
Oh, okay.
because it doesn't crack
Right.
because you're burning it.
Yeah.
We're cooking it really hot.
That sounds great.
It's wonderful.
I've heard people add miso to it too. Have you tried that yet?
I'm not a big fan of adding miso to baked goods.
Okay.
I like salt.
Oh, okay.
I love miso soup.
Miso soup is
I
the goat.
I feel like if you're using good miso, then it gets lost in the cookie and it makes a flavor that you could just have salt.
Ah, okay. All
But
right.
I'm ready to be proven wrong.
No, I mean, this is good advice. Thank you. This is what the people are here
Make
for.
some soup and then make cookies, you know?
Okay, so what are we doing now?
So this is sugar with some pumpkin spice in it, and we're going to make some little, scoop some dough balls.
Okay.
And we're going to toss them in this sugar because it is a sort of a riff on a snickerdoodle, and
Yeah.
the defining characteristics of a snickerdoodle is rolling it in cinnamony sugar.
That's the doodle part.
That
right?
is that the doodle part?
I don't know. I just,
I would actually love it if that was true.
let's say it
Man,
is.
I don't.
For the sake of
We're gonna fact
conversation.
check that one.
Okay.
So we're gonna make kind of like golf ballish sizes of dough, and then we're gonna roll it in this sugary stuff. And then in the recipe, you would take this and you would put it in the freezer for 30 minutes. Go for it.
All right.
And that's because we want everything to be nice and cold before we go in the oven, and it just kind of like relaxes from the mixing.
Love it.
So we wanted to talk about some other ways to save and
Yeah.
be sustainable with baking, right?
So yeah, we have some wonderful cookies that you brought
Oh,
here
yes,
today, right?
yeah.
And you said you had an idea for if the folks take some cookies home.
Yes. So I brought some cookies from an event that I did earlier today where we didn't sell all the cookies. And one thing that's very important to do is use all the cookies. So We crush them up and make cookie crust out of them, so that's always an excellent use. What you could do is you could save the cookies in a freezer bag, and then when you have enough to make a cookie crust, you can crush them up in your food processor, add a little bit of butter. You might not even need to add sugar, just taste it, and then you're using the entire product, especially if it has chocolate chips in it. You don't need to add much, just butter. You can use that to make a no-bake pie with just like chocolate pudding inside it or vanilla pudding. You can use it to make a pumpkin pie crust or like match it to the flavors that are in it. But it's one of my favorite things to do with cookie crumbs. If it wasn't a cookie crumb and it was like a bread crumb, I would say you could put it on top of like a crumble or a crisp like they used to do back in the olden days. But with cookies, I feel like what's underneath would kind of get a little bit lost. But that's one of the best ways to use old cookies up.
Okay.
Yeah, or like chop them up and put them in ice cream. But making a crust is like...
That's next level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or like a key lime pie. I mean, that's what key lime pie is. It's like cookies turned into... graham crackers turned into crust.
Right.
Yeah.
The quintessential graham cracker crust.
Yeah.
I always thought, I just want to eat the graham cracker. You know?
I like graham crackers too. They are very delicious.
They're good.
That's true.
Especially with some sexless bananas, I mean, it's great stuff.
It's gross.
So in addition to cookie leftovers, I'm assuming,
Yes.
you've got your, November's coming up, we're talking about pies,
Yeah.
and it being a big thing for you. Do you have a lot of leftover pie crust? Is that, what do you do in that case?
I don't have a lot of leftover pie crust as a business person.
Okay.
We try to use all of it. But if you do have leftover pie crust, one of the best things you could do is toss it in this stuff and some butter and then bake it separately. And then you have pie cookies. And a lot of people grew up eating that with like the cuts of the extra pie crust. I didn't grow up in a pie family, so that was something that was new to me. And it is absolutely delicious. It's such a fun way to use up old pie crust. That's always a great option. The other thing is you could like cut it up and bake it and like use it to top ice cream. Always you could make it into an ice cream sandwich.
Yeah.
But anything that you can do to just like use all the stuff and not throw it away. Ideally, you would make all this stuff and then like find friends and eat it all.
Yeah. Well,
But it happens.
so I did an interview with a local baker in my hometown of Long Beach at Kristen Colossus Rodriguez. And yes, a great baker. Everybody should go check out her stuff. She did this really, with leftover pie crust, she made these like pie fillings with leftover Thanksgiving stuff. So I think she used like turkey and like cranberry and stuff like that. So
Oh,
it's
it's
kind
like
of like
she made savory pies?
yeah, savory pies or an
Always do
empanada or
that.
something
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
that's such a good idea.
So
Absolutely.
That came out really nice and beautiful and
Yeah.
fluffy and crusty. Great stuff.
Yeah,
So-
anything we can do to like conserve resources and use everything, because everything that we do in baking is, a lot of it is animal products. A
Right.
lot of the cookies out on the table are actually vegan cookies, and that's a purposeful switch during the pandemic when we started having bird flu and egg shortage and things like that coming up and affecting us even be able to get eggs and get butter. There was shortages on everything, and so we kind of just pivoted and turned into making a lot of the cookies vegan, and they're so good. It's
are
just
really
one
good.
of the, it's like, why wouldn't we do that?
Right.
Just to like try and get away from using so many things that we're tied to that are, like cow dairy or like chicken eggs and things
Sure.
like that.
Sure.
But I just want to use all of it.
Yeah,
That's the
definitely.
point.
Any other like tips for fruit or anything like that? I'm thinking back to your cookbook. You do such wonderful things with fruit.
I
and-
love freezing fruit. Any fruit that you can put in the freezer and then use later is great. There's a couple things you need to know, like things like nectarines and peaches and bananas and strawberries get very soft after you thaw them out. But that being said, one thing that you can use that in your favor to make pie is freezing cut up apples and then making a pie out of it. It's like a super secret hack to draining the water that makes a apple pie hard to bake.
Okay.
So if you freeze the apples first, you cut them up and freeze them, then you thaw them out with like some sugar, you get this like syrup that comes out of them that you can reduce and make into apple syrup or put it back in the pie. But the pies, the apples have already softened, so they bake totally differently. And that's something that we do at the bakery is freeze the apples first.
I imagine it cooks quicker then in that respect,
Yeah,
right?
it definitely cooks quicker, but it also cooks nicer because the texture is already like toothsome after that. Yeah, freezing fruit, making even like, when you're thinking about using up something like fruit, I think people get hung up on the idea that they have to make like a big pot of jam and like start a business. And I mean, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I might want to like start a jam business, and then you have like 20 pounds of strawberries.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
No.
You can
I'm
just make
intimidated.
like 1/2 cup of jam very quickly and very easily.
Yeah.
And it's seasoning, and keep it in the fridge. You like season the strawberries and bring them to a boil and let it thicken and add a pinch of salt and a squeeze of lemon. And then you have like 16 ounces of jam, and it's very prized and expensive and special, rather than like worrying about being a craft jam maker.
And then
I hate making jam, by the way.
so the
Not
difference
my
between
thing.
jam and jelly, you're adding pectin, right? Is that correct?
Well, some people add pectin to jam,
Okay.
but the difference between jam and jelly is that jelly has all of the fiber taken out of it and is put through a sieve so that the juices and the pectin drip out, and then those gel after they cool. So it's a different thing entirely.
Different process.
Yeah, you have
Okay.
to drain it in a
Okay.
bag.
Do you hate making jelly as much as you
I
hate
don't like
making jam?
boiling anything.
Okay.
Super lazy.
Yeah.
It takes really a long time.
Sure.
If I can make jam in the microwave. We were talking about using the microwave earlier.
We were having serious microwave talk.
If I could, I'm gonna crack that
Yeah.
and make jam in the microwave.
Okay.
And then you can also make jam in the freezer, I hear, but I have never done it.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I like it. Sort of a yin and yang of jams.
absolutely.
So for folks who don't know,
Yes.
where can they go and try your delicious treats?
We have one store in Grand Central Market. It's a lot of cookies and some pies. And then we have a new store that's almost a year old in Culver City. It's sort of in the western part of Culver City. And that's where they can find my stuff. I have a cookbook. I have
Yes.
another one coming out in April.
What's the first cookbook called?
Dappled Stories and Recipes for Fruit Lovers. I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
about right.
good.
And then this next one coming out?
The next one is called Fat and Flour, The Joy of a Simple Bake. And you guys are the first to know that because we haven't even announced it, really. And we're just about to do that next week.
Yes, and this recipe is in the book from what I
This
understand.
is one of the recipes in the book. And you're going to eat it today. And you guys are the first to try it, other than the several people I made eat the tests.
Yes.
But yeah, it is a book about cookies. It is a book about pies, and they let me have 6 chocolate chip cookie recipes, and they let me have 5 banana bread recipes. So I've already won.
Oh man, that's great.
5 different banana breads
Yeah.
in one book.
Right. That's. I mean, my mom's here. She made banana bread all the time growing up. She still does.
And
so.
there's one called 90s Mom Banana Bread.
There it is. There it is. Yeah. What
Yeah.
kind of pans do you use for those?
Banana bread?
Yeah. Is there
Oh,
a specific?
I just
Are
use
you
like
choosing
a loaf pan.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a typical little loaf pan.
We're a team Bundant pan.
Bunt?
Bunt pan. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. For the banana bread.
We could have an entire argument about whether that makes it a bunt or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not.
Okay. Okay.
Not a bunt.
It looks gorgeous.
It's bunt shaped.
so,
I'm sure
yeah.
it's beautiful. Is there glaze on it?
No. It's just kind of by itself. So, yeah. For a while
I like
there,
that.
she had a pan. This is very '90s, Mom, and I'm sure she appreciates me kind of putting her on blast right now. But we had a sunflower.
beautiful.
Yeah. So it would come out with a sunflour on top.
That's
my
gorgeous.
mom loves
At least she
sunflowers,
made you
so.
banana bread, you know?
She
It's
did.
It's a lost art.
Yeah, and when I'm always freezing those bananas, I'm always thinking, oh, I'm gonna make,
Are you going to start that tradition with your child?
why not? Let's
That's
do
the
it.
first recipe
Yeah.
I learned how to make other than biscuits.
Okay.
It's banana bread.
Okay.
Gets you started.
And you like to add a little bit of chocolate in yours sometimes, right?
Sometimes I like to add chocolate. Sometimes that's why there's 5 different versions.
Right.
What are you feeling? Are you feeling browned butter hazelnut chocolate chip? Or are you feeling 90s mom for when you're sad and you miss your mommy?
Yeah.
There's one with streusel on top and like lots of spices in it.
Yeah, I'm always looking for like the salty or something
Salty?
like that. Yeah.
I
So that's
definitely
why I
have
asked
salt
the,
in everything.
The question about miso, so
There's no miso banana bread, brother.
no miso banana bread. So,
Not doing it.
Yeah.
I love miso. Let's not get carried away.
So the other thing I was going to say about your Culver City spot, aside from the Grand Central Market, which is grab and go, you can go and sit and hang out.
You can come and sit down and hang out. It's very cute. We have spices. We have lots of fun merch
Candles.
items. We have scented candles. We have tapered candles. We've got a very developed retail section.
Yeah.
And it's getting better because we just got our fall stuff because you have to order that months in advance.
Sure.
I'm prepared.
Right.
I've got a pie-shaped pot holder. It's flying. It's going to fly off the shelves.
Okay.
It's going to be so great.
Is that the only pot holder you have?
Yeah, I don't usually sell pot holders, but I
Okay.
found one that had a pie on it.
Okay.
So I got
Sounds
that.
good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, I think we've taken our time up here alone. We got to make room for the next guest as far as that goes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course.
I'll take this.
Okay. Nicole Rucker, everybody. Isn't she great? We love Nicole. I'm so glad she came out to join us today. Okay, so as we break down, we are going to go ahead and get ready for the next panel discussion. I'm going to give them a couple minutes. What did everybody think of that segment? Yeah. Sounds yummy? Oh, it smells. Okay. Might be the vanilla or something like that. So, but I guarantee if you haven't tried a cookie, you should go ahead and try that afterwards. So maybe that'll change your mind a little bit. Oh, yummy. Okay. Okay. Yummy. All right. Gotcha. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my colleagues now who are going to take over the show from here on out. We have Erin Stone, our climate emergency reporter, and Jacob Margolis, our science reporter. Come on out, guys.
Wow. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing to see all of you. Oh, I'm going to take this out. Thank you all for being here. We've got some really exciting guests with us tonight. So we'd like to invite our special guests up to the stage if you guys would join us.
Yay.
Yay,
Clap.
let's give them a hand.
Yay.
They've come from very long distances, so we're very grateful to have them here. So we've got Helen McGrath here, who is a fifth-generation farmer from Ventura County, grows primarily citrus and avocados. And here in the middle, we've got Trevor Tagg, who came from the Imperial Valley of Southern California, grows mostly alfalfa and other cattle feed crops, third-generation farmer. And then we've got Renata Brillinger, who is the co-founder of the California Climate and Agriculture Network, or CalCAN, which works with farmers and policymakers to advance sustainable policy in agriculture. So we're really lucky to have you here, and thank you all for being here. And Jacob, I'm going to pass it to you to kick it off with our first question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. So, Helen and Trevor, tell us about how climate change has affected you specifically, and then Renata, I want to hear what farmers are telling you in general. Please, whoever wants to take it first.
Well, it's multifaceted. I mean, the first thing to talk about is the actual weather and changes in weather patterns. We're all coming off of a pretty brutal heat wave, and which technically is not uncommon this time of year, but it's different as far as the length of it. It's not a 1 or 2 day, it's a multi-day event. We didn't have cool temperatures in the evenings. And we're really starting to see some humidity in a way that isn't normal for our areas. The impacts of heat are pretty significant, regardless of your commodity. They're significant on our workforce. So, that's obviously the first thing that comes to mind, and is probably at the forefront of all of our minds. But it's also not just heat. Cold temperatures can also have a real big impact, especially during drought years when the soils are drier. There's less ambient heat and moisture to protect our crops. Santa Ana winds are no longer seasonal. Obviously the impact of the historic drought we just had, followed by 2 really significant wet winters. What is essentially climate models that I remember first seeing in undergraduate school, in college, playing out. These longer periods of dry and these deluges of precipitation, where in the past we kind of had smaller wet events spread over time. So the weather.
Are there particular impacts to citrus crops and also to? I know avocado. They grow a lot of avocado in the area as well, and heat just absolutely eviscerates.
Yeah, there's only
avocado trees.
5 counties in the country where we commercially grow avocados, and they're all in California, from San Diego to San Luis Obispo County. So once you get over 105, we really start to get worried about the trees dropping fruit, especially this time of year where we have next year's crop setting and hopefully holding. You can kind of just go through the Santa Clara Valley where my family farms, which is Fillmore, from east to west, and once you turn a certain corner, the trees look like they've been burnt. They'll sometimes recover, but it's you can just really see how delicate they are. Citrus are a little bit more resilient to heat and cold, but there's also, in Ventura County, we grow over 200 different commodities. In the state, we grow over 400 now. So it impacts every fruit and vegetable very differently. I know growers on the Oxnard Plain that lost transplants. But in addition to just, the weather, climate change has really started to infiltrate our thinking, the culture of agriculture. I have a lot of growers in my life that I respect and depend on, and I hear them acknowledging climate change in a way that people never did before. We have to kind of see it to believe it. And so I think it's integrated into our thinking and our planning now. But we don't get to deal with things kind of in a vacuum. Everything's interrelated. Of course, climate change impacts our operations, but so does what our workforce is dealing with, economic pressures, global markets. So we can't just kind of deal with things one-off.
We'll get into how you guys are dealing with it.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Trevor as well, and then Renata.
You're in the Imperial Valley, which is totally different than, obviously, the Ventura area.
So we grow alfalfa, we grow other forage commodities in the Imperial Valley. We have one water source that is the Colorado River. We went from a place that no one really realized, the corner of California, no one knew it was there, and now all of a sudden we're kind of in the middle of everything because it seems to have, obviously because of the Colorado River and Imperial Irrigation Districts, the grounds allocations on the river, we are in the middle of it. So to answer your question about climate and what is my generation, my brother and I, for example, what do we talk about, what do we look at? So more than anything for us, especially very similar to what she was saying, the similarities in our seasons, right, have seemed to change, at least in the last 5 or 6 years. In fact, the last 2 winters have been unseasonably wet for us, which in Imperial County, the last thing we want is rain, right? It's not like the Midwest where we're looking for it. Rain is really, really devastating, and then we've had a whole bunch of it. So learning how to take those notes, recall that information to understand how to deal with it when we go forward. Other real significant conversations that go on are, looking forward, looking at the outlets, the outlooks of what do we grow, what can we grow, how do we grow these things, how do we incorporate more efficiency into what we do. For Imperial County specifically, rotations are a super important thing that a lot of folks kind of forget about, but we can do a lot as far as water conservation with being able to rotate these grounds. One thing that is kind of needs to be pointed out is, at least in Imperial County, but it is the same everywhere. Remember, a cardiologist and a podiatrist are both doctors, but you're not going to have your podiatrist cut your chest open, right? Right? So in agriculture, it's very, very similar. You might have a farmer that is a produce farmer, say spinach or lettuce or avocados, and you might have a farmer that is an alfalfa farmer. We're both farmers, but it's very, very different to use that analogy, and that's something that's really important. Along that same line, so ideas that are going on, at least in Imperial County, so now a lot of things that we're doing, and this is very much at play because the folks doing this job, there's not many of us left, which means that we have to start to cooperate and work together, and we are. So we're swapping ground and trading ground out, both for rotations, but is also efficiency and looking forward at how can we accomplish the same goals, having less or dealing with less, using less, et cetera.
And so just really briefly, what are the primary crops you're seeing impacted that you're having to deal with regularly?
Well, so frankly, the way like water policy works at home, our forage commodity markets are much more implicated by the commodities markets and stuff like that. The crops that are actually affected the most are the directly consumed crops by humans, right? So like, I'll give you an example. We were talking about dehy onions is something that I grow. That's a crop that I've introduced onto our ranch.
Onions that are used for dehydration specifically in the food
Right.
world. Okay, I didn't know what dehy onions
that's
were
cool,
about
yeah.
25 minutes ago. So
So for example, being able to introduce those, but I had to spend a significant amount of money to be able to have the infrastructure to be able to do that. Ergo, my doctor analogy, right? But it gives us the ability to swap ground, move ground back and forth, and then conserve water throughout the time of year, right? Crops don't care about calendars. You do it when the opportunity presents itself, spring, summer, fall, yada, yada.
yeah.
So that's how we think.
And Renata?
So I always love being around farmers and being next to them, listening to them. There's a whole different way of looking at the world than most of us, to your point, Trevor. So I've been farmer adjacent for like 25, 30 years in my work. And what I hear from the sort of the pattern of what I hear is that, well, what I notice about farmers is they're incredibly adaptable. They have always had to deal with unpredictable, uncontrollable circumstances. It doesn't rain as early as you want it, or as much, or it's colder than you want, or whatever. So that's just a given. You have to. You'll leave the business if you can't do that. If you can't get up and just roll with it and figure it out and problem solve whatever is in front of you. But what I have noticed in the last 10 years or so in California is that the degree to which people are getting hit by extreme events, unpredictable events, what we've started talking about is whiplash. I have a farmer friend in the Fresno area who grows stone fruit. So one fall, they all got frosted early and lost his crop. Next spring, it wasn't a good. It was a warmer winter. They didn't set right. It's just these patterns that are just extremely hard to predict. And even the old timers, even the multi-generational farms, even people who have had this in their blood for a long, long time don't know what to make of it sometimes. And so it's just the rapidity, of the events. And I think we can, those of us who don't farm can kind of relate to that. Like, just think about the fires, the floods, right? Things are quickening. There's a quickening happening. So. But these folks are making their living and feeding us, and still figuring it out. So whiplash and unpredictability. And then I just wanted to put kind of a finer point on something Helen said about farm workers, people who are laboring in the fields. And sometimes those are the farmers themselves. Bigger farmers aren't usually out in the field, but whoever is actually like out there every day, that's another sort of community we really have to be thinking about, because without those folks, none of us are eating. And yeah, they're hardy, and yeah, a lot of them have grown up in places where agriculture, long lines of agriculture, but it's the heat, and the drinking water contamination that they're dealing with is profound. So just wanted to make sure that we're holding that as well.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing all that. I mean, let's really dig into how you guys are dealing with this new normal. I mean, I had the privilege of visiting with Trevor at his ranch down in the Imperial Valley, and there's a lot of stuff that you're doing to deal with this. So maybe this time we'll start with Trevor, and then we'll go with Helen, and then back to Renata.
So specifically,
and Trevor, actually, one more thing. Why don't you guys also add what are the main challenges to how you're trying to deal with these changes that you're dealing with?
So dealing with these changes, across the board, there's so much going on. I mean, the allocations on the Colorado River, stemming back from the context with which Imperial Irrigation District has the trust on the river, like how they have a right to the water and going forward, has become a huge challenge. It is our job to be stewards of that water. But remember, in Imperial County, not to be too shocking, but of 425,000 irrigable acres, really, there's maybe 100 of us. There's really not anybody left to do any of this. So we're advocating as far as change is concerned, and like showing that we can adapt. The most resilient people, in my opinion, on the planet, and I'm obviously biased, is the ag community. And you can point to this anywhere in the world about how people change and shift to accomplish a goal. But the hardest part about it for us has been to try to color within the lines of the policy shifting quicker than we are able to adapt to it, be it infrastructure, be it the financing taken infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, like, take an onion crop. You put it in the ground in October, but we don't harvest it until May. A million things could go wrong between then and now. I will tell you with pride, we had gorgeous fields March 1st and ended up with a crop failure. That happens. So being able to adapt as quickly as the world wants you to adapt is hard, because in agriculture's case, like, take in the case of orchards, a lot of times it's 5 or 6 years before you start producing fruit. Well, the whole world might change between the time you have a sapling to the time that you are harvesting. And the unpredictability of that makes it very difficult to achieve these efficiency goals, or like climate change, for example. It becomes very difficult to know, okay, where on the dartboard am I supposed to be in 5 years? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
So
and do you mind sharing, Trevor, what are some specific ways you have adapted to these policy changes and the water shortages?
So, so like I said, trying to introduce row crops that we can then use different infrastructures. So sprinkler pipes, sprinkler pumps, right?
Those use less water than kind of traditional irrigation?
So no, like one kind of important note is not necessarily that the individual crops use less water. It's that if my farm, say 3,200 acres, and I'm only growing some of these forage crops, say alfalfa, Bermuda grass, klein grass, et cetera, right? And I'm growing all of that all summer long, right? Then I'm using a huge water footprint, right? Well, if I don't grow some of these other crops and I come over here, because there's only so many of me, my whole ranch is me, my dad, my brother, and like 5 guys. There's a lot going on. I'm only so capable of so much, right? So if we introduce some of these other things in a winter, when it's not in the middle of the summer, my ranch can still work year round. I can keep my guys around year round. Her comment about our employees, these guys doing this, they're the most important thing in my entire world. And I'm able to keep a crew busy year round. Everybody's happy. They become skilled labor, not unskilled labor, because in the summer they're doing a dozen things, but in the winter they're doing a dozen completely different things. And that's a huge piece of the adaptability of what we're trying to accomplish.
So,
Thanks, yeah.
So a really important part of adaptation is obviously the development of, say, when you're talking about stone fruit, or I'm thinking fruit trees in particular, like development of different rootstocks, or development of different, I think about specifically, again, trees that can handle lower chill hours, right? Is there enough development going on right now, or do you see it? Do you think that any of that development of those new things is keeping up with the changes that you're seeing, I guess, in the fields? And if it does take 5 years to establish an orchard, for instance, like, are we going to hit a point where, we could just no longer grow stone fruit in California?
I think that the farming side can handle that adaptability, but like Trevor said, we need a regulatory framework that can allow us to adapt, and we need it to pencil out economically. It's a part of farming that nobody likes to talk about. We have to make a living. We have to be able to afford to implement these mitigation practices. And I'm on Renata's Farmer Advisory Council. She's started, CalCAN really pushed for climate smart agriculture programs to pay farmers to implement these practices in a cost sharing way. So the demand on those programs has skyrocketed in the last few years, especially in Ventura County. We had record-breaking numbers of people apply for the State Water Energy and Efficiency Program, EQIP, which is a federal program that is run through the Natural Resources Conservation District. They're having record years. So, we need something to offset the cost to implement those practices. But yeah, the farmers have found a way to come up with new rootstocks, new varieties, new hybrids for hundreds of years, if not beyond, that we're perfectly capable of doing. But We need cooperative extension to be funded fully so they can do that. We need our researchers funded to do that. We need all of these research partners to have the financial resources and the manpower that they need to support us as an industry.
Is
we
that
have to invest in and value food production, which we don't do as a society.
You also have to kind of take flyers, especially, I assume, in some level when instituting new fruit trees across an orchard, right? And you don't know if it's going to work out the way you want it to over 5 years. And if you're talking about the monetary aspect of it.
Yeah, so that's exactly right, and that's a really astute point. Like I'll give you a kind of one example. I'm 1 degree related to this. We don't actually farm these commodities ourselves, but we swap ground. There's only a few of us at home. We know each other. So in the world of spinach, right? Like spinach is become a thing that's become real popular in the last, I don't know, say 10 or 15 years. It didn't exist like at home, right? And now in Imperial County, we produce 60% of it, 70% of it for 4 or 5 months out of the year. So there's quite a bit of money involved in it. Some of it has to do with the packaging and yada, yada, yada. So in the spinach world, mildew is a huge deal at home, right? And it is where it's grown in the Salinas Valley, et cetera, right? Well, genetics have been able to create these strains to combat those strains of mold and mildew. There are 22, 23, 24 involved in this. Why is that? Well, because a handful of companies who are profiting off of this are seeing out into the future, and they're making that pivot to be able to continue to produce this, right? Whereas, let's say, this past winter in Imperial County, we were decimated by mold and mildew in these varieties of D-high onions. Well, because of the money and the companies that are involved in this, I'm not a geneticist, right? I'm just a humble little farmer, but it wasn't an advantage to them. It wasn't that high on their priority list, as an example. And it's a way to, I use that as example to look at what she's saying about, we are doing this for money. There do need to be dollars in this. And you can see where there's dollars, the technology is amazing. And where the dollars are kind of short, it's kind of lacking.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. Yeah, let's hear, Renata, I'd love to hear from you about kind of the big picture kind of policies that are occurring to help farmers like Helen and Trevor adapt to these changes and what more is needed.
Yeah. Just before I get into that, I'm often thinking about a farmer named Wendell Berry when these conversations happen. He's a Kentucky farmer. He's also an author and a poet. Recommend reading. He wrote an essay in the 70s that was about problem solving, and he basically said a good solution solves more than one problem. That's that in a nutshell. What he wrote, and I always think of that, and farmers are really good at this. They solve multiple problems. They have multiple problems to face, and then they solve multiple problems with, single solutions. And when I think about what we really need in the face of climate change and all these impacts, is I think about looking for 3 things, trying to get them all solved at once. One is, how are we going to reduce greenhouse gases? And farms can do that through various practices. How can we make farms more resilient so that we have food to eat and farmers can stay in business? And that's the third one. How can farmers stay in business? How can we make it so that those practices that they can use are profitable? It cuts their costs, or it makes them more money, or they get incentivized. And sometimes that's really important up front, is to get those incentives there for farmers until it becomes the new business as usual. And when you look at like solar or electric cars, we do that there all the time. We give money away, we pump money into the economy, we give people incentives to put the induction stove in their house or whatever, until it becomes, until the market shifts and those become affordable compared to the old way of doing things, or cheaper even. So it's the same principle exactly, and I think this is why public policy is so important and why it can be so powerful, is if we, the taxpayer and the voters, make sure that farmers have these tools, technical assistance, research, and direct incentives, cost shares, that will unlock their innate innovations, their innate ability to figure things out, grow the new crops or whatever. There's some programs that California has started to do this, that one of them is called the Healthy Soils Program. It's very, very popular, way oversubscribed, and there's never enough money for it. There's a water conservation program. There's a farmland conservation program that limits urban sprawl and protects farmland so we don't lose it, because we're losing farmland like crazy to development. So these are all programs where the government gives farmers grants to do those things that have benefits for the community, for the farmer, and for the environment, not just climate, but cleaner air and water. And I can talk about more details if you want some examples.
Yeah, I want to make sure we have time for audience questions. But, I guess just real quick, if you each could briefly just I know this is not a brief question at all, but share when you're looking towards the future of your work and, your family and your business, what do you see here? What does the future of farming really look like here?
Well, I think, we're going to have a pretty significant contraction in acreage. There's the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, which requires every groundwater basin in the state of California be managed, have a sustainability management plan, and have an agency that oversees it. We estimate somewhere between 1 to 2 million acres will be taken out of production once that's really implemented, either because of reduced water usage requirements or cost of water. But regardless of that, there's always going to be a need to produce food in California. The soils, the climate, land is designated as agriculture in perpetuity. So we're going to have to find out how to do that. I think we're going to have to collaborate and innovate in ways that are unprecedented, and really just we need to do it on the environmental side, we need to do it on the agricultural side. We really need to kind of step back and realize we're not going to be able to just litigate and legislate our way out of these solutions. There's millions and millions of dollars. It's almost embarrassing that's being wasted on trying to bring back, produce a fish or produce another drop of water. And we're guilty of it as all stakeholders in the food system. I really hope we can kind of put our swords down and maybe redirect those projects and resources into projects and collaboration and more long-term solutions.
Thanks, Helen. Trevor, how about you?
So specifically, what do I see in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Crystal ball, yeah.
So the landscape's pretty frightening. I'm 38. I love what I do. I mean, it's not a job. It's not a career. It's not anything like that. It's just a lifestyle. It's what I do. I drive around every day with a dog in my pickup, and I get to just, I hang out. It's stressful. It's long. Kind of along the same lines, just not as intelligent because I'm just not. But, where I see this going on, so I was explaining to Jacob. So, at some point in the 60s, some 70% of America was like 1 degree related to agriculture, meaning like even if you had a couple chickens in your backyard, or maybe grandma did, right, and you collected the eggs, at least you understood a little bit about food and water and cleanliness, right? Now, 99.5% of the population of our country is fed by 0.5%. And that disconnect over multiple generations has caused, she referenced swords, and it's absolutely the case. In the state of California, we are the breadbasket of, frankly, our world, let alone our country. Now, I'm not advocating against all the policy, but we need to take a step back and understand kind of what is going on in the world and where we're feeding ourselves from, and that a lot has to do with understanding just how food is made, simple food. Like, alfalfa gets scrutinized a lot because it's not on grocery store shelves. And you can point to dairy and et cetera, but it's also the most efficient form of protein that we have as humans. And so if you look at it from the base level, it becomes very, very expensive to produce that same amount of protein, right? So then all of a sudden, if we continue to regulate that, then only the top 10% of our world can afford food in the first place. And something that I'm insanely proud of, what keeps me going, is the fact that, American agriculture, let alone California and Imperial Valley agriculture, we're the most efficient at what we do anywhere on our planet. There's no reason that clean, healthy food isn't everywhere for very, very cheap. And so that's something that's super important, and I only use it as a pitch to the whole put your swords down and kind of let's take a step back and look at what we're doing.
Thanks, Renata. Thanks, Trevor.
I think we are approaching peak consolidation. I don't think the future. I don't think that we can sustain that amount of consolidation as the climate crisis continues to hit and as fossil fuels continue to be more and more expensive. I'm looking a generation or two out, and so I think it's going to hurt a lot. Honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of pain ahead. But I do think that the only way to the other side is to relocalize, diversify, crop-wise, to have more people in contact with the land. I hear all the time about all kinds of young people that really want to get in this work. They're so moved by wanting to reconnect with where their food comes from, to have their hands in the soil, or at least, know how to grow something, or just be, in relationship to a farmer. They're just so, that gives me a lot of hope, because as we relocalize, we're going to need more people back on the land. We can't keep doing it with 0.5%. It's just gotten way. I appreciate efficiency, but we have to be thinking about what kind of efficiency we're talking about. And I think in the quest for hyper efficiency, hyper industrialization, we've lost the culture in agriculture. To bring it back to what you started with, Helen.
Thank you all so much. I think we're ready to open it up to audience questions. We've got a few minutes here. We'll bring a mic to you, and just remember, we want to get through all the questions we can, and make sure that that question is a question and has a question mark at the end of it.
Hey, hi, thank you very much. My grandfather was a dairy farmer in New Jersey, and I know how hard it is. I was at the other one that was about the restaurant people, and then I'm here, and I hear a lot about adaptation, and it makes me sad, because I'm hearing underneath what we need to do as farmers. I'm not a farmer, but what farmers need to do to also help mitigate climate change. So I didn't hear anything about regenerative agriculture. I didn't hear anything about sustainable agriculture. And I don't know if you're still using petrochemical, fertilizers and so forth. And I know that that's the structure, but I'd love to hear how you're working to change it, not just to adapt to a very complex system. Thank you.
We don't have a working definition for regenerative agriculture. CDFA is working on that. We need one, just like we needed one for organics. We need a prototype to follow. We need to be able to be certified in it. And I think people would be really shocked when they think of regenerative agriculture, how many operations and commodities actually already use those practices. We grow trees, and we didn't always do that. My dad grew over 50 different types of row crops in his career and pivoted to trees in the late 90s. But looking into, the intensity of our soil organic matter, the sequestration that we're participating in, which is starting to be quantified on a commodity by commodity basis, I think people really need to be careful about buzzwords and solutions that have been presented as simple. They've mostly been done by people who aren't farmers and couldn't farm for a living to save their life. We're trying to farm to save for a living. And I think, like in any other conversation where a group of people need to be centered, you need to center actual people who are farming for a living. And please try to look through the glossy documentaries and the glossy Instagram accounts and the fact that people have presented soil health as the end-all be-all solution, it's just offensive to indigenous communities that have known that for millennia, all the way up to, my conventional farmer dad growing broccoli on the Oxnard Plain. I never forget when he showed me, it's not dirt, it's soil, it's alive. So really understand that we're already thinking about these things, we're already implementing these things. We're already implementing sustainable practices at large scales. Please stop thinking about things in terms of large versus small. We need all scales of agriculture. Farmers markets needs all scale. Irwan needs all scales. Costco needs all scales. We have to really kind of pull the curtain back on a lot of those really attractive, pretty solutions. It's really problematic. It's really harmful to the actual work and the actual science and the actual collaboration and projects that are being done that all of us have participated in.
So just kind of along that same line, and I do agree. But one thing to remember too is, so one thing about sustainability is survival. We're losing so many farms and ranches of all kinds of sizes, not just little, some huge operations as well. And so as far as like you say, regenerative and stuff, and I do agree with some caution in some of these buzzwords and stuff, but also remember, like you referenced petrochemicals, et cetera, those things are expensive. I mean, I don't want to use them if I don't have to. Insecticides, herbicides, miticides, take your pick. They're all, I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars a gallon. Granted, I might be using an ounce or two, but over the course of a few hundred acres, I mean, it's insane. It's insane what these things cost. So like, we don't advertise this. It doesn't go on an Instagram account, but like, well, actually, Lo might put it on one, but like, I'll give you an example. So you have a conventional alfalfa field, right? And this is stuff that I can't advertise, but I will tell you, this goes on my ranch. I'm doing it to save money, but that goes to regeneration. So just a conventional alfalfa field, right? And so certain times of year you get armyworms and certain times of year you get aphids and stuff. But you also get a lot of ladybugs and you get a lot of lacewings. So my entomologist, who's also a year or two younger than me, right, grew up a different attitude, right? So we're sweeping in our net, right? And we're looking, well, normally, 30 years ago, or my dad, who I have to fight off all the time, is saying, no, we need to get after it. We need to spray this stuff. Well, we have an ecosystem we're dealing with. Yeah, I'm taking a little bit of damage, but I have ladybugs and lacewings working, so I'm not going to spray that. I'm not going to make that call. It might be $50 an acre, $60 an acre, and I will be the first to tell you we're doing this from a monetary standpoint. But the sustainability and the regeneration is a huge piece of that puzzle, because at least for the time being, I'm here in front of you to explain those things to you. Unfortunately, because of social media, we are looking, well, I don't know, social media, I shouldn't blame just that, but like you're looking for, we've been geared to look for specific things like wins and losses, blacks and whites and stuff like that, like very stark differences. And in agriculture, it's just not the case. I mean, we do so many things that it's just hard to explain that is exactly along the line of what you're describing. It's a great question.
As consumers and voters, we hear a lot about farm subsidies that go to corn and soy. How can we help you, from a consumer and voter standpoint, to continue to live your lifestyle and provide us with food?
This is Renata's favorite question. I think that I kind of touched on this earlier. We need to, instead of demonizing farming, we need to value. We don't want to romanticize it either. We do need to value food production. We need to invest in food production, just like all these other important aspects of our society: education, healthcare, and food production. We don't do it on a scale that comparable ag economies do. Chile, Brazil, Australia, the EU, they have so much investment and support from the research side. Their industries have a lot of innovation. Ours do as well, but I talked about all these wraparound support systems that we need in order. No good farmer runs their farm in a silo. We have entomologists, PCAs, soil scientists, we have crop advisors. The entry-level position at the NRCS is $40,000 a year. We need these institutional support systems. We need programs like what Renata is advocating for. We quite literally, and this is a mentality shift. I know it's generational. My father's generation he'd be cringing if he was here now. We're going to do it on our own. We're on our own. I'm in a different place where anything that can help me shave off some costs and implement these practices faster, I'm completely happy to pursue. So the Farm Bill, there's a climate bond that's going to be on the ballot this November. And please just continue to educate yourselves. Really listen to people who make a living farming. We do have to make a living. It is a culture, it is a vocation, but if we can't pay our employees not only just a living wage, but a competitive wage, If we can't pay our property taxes, you know, I work from a very privileged standpoint. We own our land. We're operating with very little debt right now. That could change any minute, but, and we're still, I still can't justify expanding even just a few acres. I can't justify hiring someone. I can't justify new equipment. My husband will never work on the farm. That's probably an okay thing, but we're really working with very slim margins, and small farmers, medium-sized farmers, which is the majority of California, and definitely Ventura County, and large-scale farmers are really on the precipice. And many of these are family-run operations. Again, the romanticized small farm looks very different throughout the state. I was just hanging out with a new farmer friend last week. She's a second-generation Mexican-American family. They employ 1,500 people. They farm thousands of acres. We need operations like them to continue, and local ownership, and which comes with a commitment to the land and a commitment to moving forward and evolving. I don't know if either of you have anything to add, especially you, Renata.
Yeah, just quickly, November 5th is election, big one. I think the best things consumers can do is be careful with your votes. You know, ask everybody on the ballot, ask them what they think about agriculture and food and climate change, and what's, you know, how in whatever way that's important to you. Find out what your local supervisors or your city council members think about it, all the way up to Congress. The ag committees, we have 5 or 6 California Congress people on the ag committee. Those are the folks who have the biggest influence on the Farm Bill, which is what you were talking about with the subsidies. There's a pretty big difference, you know, between the parties about how they look at the Farm Bill. So just you know, learn about that. And then I want to just really put a fine point on Proposition 4 here in California. It's a climate bond, $10 billion of investments in all kinds of climate-related projects that are really important: forest protection, wetland restoration, water, safe drinking water, weatherization for farm worker housing, and $385 million for some of the climate smart ag programs that we talked about tonight. There's no other place that money can come from at this point. The state is broke, and when people are broke, they have to take out loans, and that's essentially what a bond is. And I would argue we can't wait till the stock market and the rich people in California pay, you know, till the taxes get pulled in from the rich people in California. We have a progressive tax code, and that's a good thing, but it goes up and down with the stock market, and until those coffers are replenished, we have to borrow to deal with this crisis, and the sooner we do it, the cheaper it will be over the long run. So vote for Prop 4.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you all for what you're doing and for educating us. And one of the most important elements for me that I took away today is how little I know. And the disconnect between the consumer and the provider is, I think, seems to be so vast. And my question to you, as a person who is interested in educating myself and interested in other people learning about it, so we can shift our views as a society and our understanding of what is at stake. What can you do to help us, other than clearly coming here? What can you do to help us close the gap?
So like I said, like on our ranch, so my lovely better half is sitting over there, and like one thing that we've tried to simply just like our Instagram, right? And we don't do anything crazy with that. We just try to do the best we can to show like that's a hay baler baling hay, just like to start. Those are some of the things that we try and do just on a small little ranch. And there's a lot with media. There's a lot of positives that come out of, like, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen a pineapple plant, but to be perfectly honest with you, I hadn't seen one before either until a few years ago. I had no idea they looked like that. Like, just like stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like just simple things like that. California Farm Bureau. So I'm really involved with our local Farm Bureau. I spend a lot of time advocating. If you ask my brother what my job is on the ranch, he'll tell you that I'm the custodian, because I clean up everyone's mess. Him and my dad, like I work with my dad and my brother, and it's actually really cool. But, you know, they do all the farming and all that stuff, and I do everything else. And but, you know, there's other participation. So like at home too, something else that we do that we're really proud of. My mom's a piece of this. You can see it's a real family issue, but like the FFAs are growing again. FFAs are something that frankly, when I was in high school in the early 2000s, it was kind of a welding class, at least for us, maybe a woodworking class. Now there's 140 kids in it. Most of them from no ag background whatsoever, and these programs, these amazing advisors throughout the state. I mean, I'm bragging about our county, but they're offering these kids the ability to be involved with some of these pesticide companies, to be involved with some of these, like BASF, whether it be like protein grading and stuff like that. Those are different things that we have tried on our end to push this idea of agriculture out. Like, Lauren and I kind of, this is kind of funny. I'm kind of embarrassed, but I'll throw it out there. Like, so, we throw out there like that we're trying to make ag sexy again, right? Because we're trying to bring kids back into it because there's such a disconnect, and we're seeing that gap close like ever so slightly because folks like you were like willing to come out. Another big piece of the puzzle that I guess you have to take my word for it, but farmers in general really just want to be left alone. And that's our own worst enemy, because unfortunately for many generations, since, it was our ranch, don't come on my ranch, leave me alone, I'm gonna do my thing, you do yours. Well, people were curious, and then so folks started to kind of make up the story and try to make up their own thing. So a big reason why I'm here in front of you right now is because I want to be able to tell my own story, and what I find is the audience is usually really receptive to it. That's a lot of what at least I as an individual try to do. I mean, it took us 3.5 hours to get up here. But we took the time to do it just to say hello, just to show that, like, people that grow alfalfa in the valley, like, we're not evil, like, we're just humans. And the more you educate, the more you realize, like, that gap closes really quickly. That's what we do.
We probably have time for one more question. So
Good question. What are you most excited about the future of farming, or what you are most hoping for?
I am really excited about this bridging that's happening right now with the new generation coming in, like you, and the previous generation with a lot of experience and wisdom. It's a precious moment in time. It feels like where the aging of the American farmer isn't just the farmer, it's everyone else around us. It's all the people I've already named, the PCAs, the soil scientists. So needing that next generation to come in and not just work on the farm, but look at all of these other pieces that we rely on is really important. I also see a lot of cross-collaboration between stakeholders that usually were rather antagonistic. In some cases, they still are, but there's a real willingness among the farming community to reach out and build bridges and collaborate. And just like Trevor said, we are open books now. We're willing to show you what we're dealing with, show you what our challenges are, showing you what our accomplishments are. We're going to depend on that in order to continue to grow food in this country and in the state of California. So that is something that I'm inspired by and really hopeful about. People like you.
Ditto.
Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists, our incredible panelists, for coming from so far and sharing so much with us.